going on, guys? Aaron from Top Tier Gaming here, and today I am coming at you with an updated Crystal Beast deck profile. You know, it's been a minute since my last deck profile that featured the combo variant of the deck, and that of course is a more fun variant you can play. But today I'm going to be profiling the more control version, more frequently called Conclave Control. And it's a very control style, version of Crystal Beast that opts to run really powerful floodgates that beat the meta and optimizes its deck in order to try to beat the format we're currently in that's filled with, Tearlament and Dark World, Fluanderies, all these insanely powerful decks. And yeah, this version of Crystal Beast, optimizes the deck in a way that it can, sort of keep up with these decks' pace in the format. There's also some really nifty things I'm doing with this deck, and I think there's some really cool spice in the extra deck, and no, it's not just like random garbage that I'm calling spice. It's something I think is pretty cool that I haven't seen many people do, and it has to do with parts of the other cards in the deck. You guys will see when I get to it, but I do think there's stuff in the extra deck that is pretty cool. Before we hop into this deck profile, I do want to let you guys know, Discord link down below along with all of our other social media links. Also, I'm trying to climb the 10K ladder. I think we're really close to 13K, or not really close, but we're at 12.6. So if you do enjoy this video content and you like what you see here, feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps me out and what I do here on the channel. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into this Conclave Control deck profile. Alright guys, so I'm going to go over the 40 card main deck and the 15 card extra deck and sort of explain my ratios and why I'm running what I'm running. And again, this is the control version, not the combo variant, so there is going to be less Crystal Beast monsters than a pure Crystal Beast deck, and if you want to see a combo variant, there is one on my channel if you want to check it out. Without further ado, let's hop into this deck profile. So starting off, we have 3 Crystal Beast Sapphire Pegasus, and this is of course your main starter. It's been the main Crystal Beast monster since the GX era. I mean, this is the most important Crystal Beast monster because it lets you get to your other Crystal Beast and more of itself, more importantly. So it does function as a nice starter card, although as a starter, it doesn't get you very far by itself, but in combination with other Crystal Beast cards, it's pretty good. Then we play 1 Cobalt Eagle, and the reason we play 1 Cobalt Eagle is you want another Crystal Beast monster in your deck so that your engine has a little more oomph to it. You'll run out of engine very quickly if you don't play at least one other Crystal Beast name in my experience. And we choose Cobalt Eagle because it plays around there can be only one the best. And the fact that its wind is pretty nifty because there's some extra deck cards you can decide to play where that's relevant. And then we have, for the last gem in the deck, or the last crystal I should say, we have 1 Ruby Carbuncle, which obviously is, if Pegasus is the best, Carbuncle has always been the second best because it's the most explosive Crystal Beast, being able to special summon all your Crystal Beast monsters in your spell and trap card zone, which can actually go for some pretty explosive plays, relatively speaking. So this is where a lot of your power lies, is in the Ruby Carbuncle. Then we play 2 Crystal Beast Rainbow Dragon. Now, this card is very important because, one, it's one of the best cards to actually put in your spell and trap card zone because it allows you to get extra Crystal Beast monsters and of course add Rainbow Dragon to your hand. But also it's a 3k body, which when you're grinding and you're having floodgates on the field, a 3k body is actually massive, and it's what's going to be pushing for a lot of damage. So even if you can't use its effect because you drew Rainbow Dragon already, this card is still useful just being a beat stick. Some people opt to play 3. I don't really think that's necessary. I think 2 is a perfect ratio because it's not a card you really want to draw per se, even though it's not terrible. You really want to be setting this off of Crystal Bond or Pegasus. And for the last Crystal Beast monster, we have 1 Rainbow Dragon. And I mean, I guess it's not really a Crystal Beast monster. However, it is one of the most important cards for the deck, and it has a solid use in this deck because you need it to activate one of your spell cards, which is very important, and to use your Crystal Beast Rainbow Dragon. So it is a necessary brick in the deck that you have to play. You're not ever going to be summoning it because you can't meet its condition, but you're still forced to play it. That's it for Crystal Beast monsters. On to the spells, which is really the bulk of Crystal Beast, is how many consistency spells they actually have. So we're going to start with 3 Rainbow Bridge of the Heart, and this is definitely the most important spell in the deck. Probably the most powerful card they got from their structure deck is Rainbow Bridge of the Heart, and this card is really what Crystal Beast needed to function. It does so much for the deck in so many different ways. So, it gives you an extra normal summon, which is nice if you open multiple Pegasus or find a way to search an additional Pegasus. One of its best effects is that you can destroy a Crystal Beast monster, anywhere, even in your hand or field, and you can add a Crystal Beast spell from your deck to your hand, or a crystal spell, excuse me. That's phenomenal because there's a lot of good targets, and then it's also an interrupt. So when a Crystal Beast monster is placed in your spell and trap card zone, you can bounce this card and a card your opponent controls, which is huge. This card is interruption, it's like follow-up and searches your plays, and it gives you an additional normal summon. Overall, this card is something you want to max at 3, even though you need a Crystal Beast to like in your hand, or to see a Crystal Beast for this card to be good. I think it's still worth playing at 3. Then we have 3 Rainbow Bridge, which is honestly phenomenal because it's not once per turn. All it does is add a crystal spell or trap from your deck to your hand, but this is essentially just 3 more copies of every crystal spell or trap in your deck because it's not once per turn. Like if you draw 3 of this, it's not like 2 of them are dead, you're just gonna spam all 3. And it does open this deck like to have a small weakness to draw, and by small weakness, in some hands it's a very large weakness. So draw is something you do have to be a little bit careful of, but yeah, we're definitely gonna max 3 Rainbow Bridge because it's insane. Arguably, one of the best spells for Crystal Beast is 2 Crystal Bond. Now, why am I playing 2 of this if it's one of the best? Simply put, you only have like 5 Crystal Beast monsters in your deck outside of the Rainbow Dragon, so I guess you have 7. So if you draw this like late game, you've probably already gone through your engine, and that's not something you really want. And while you do want to see it, not only do you have the 3 Rainbow Bridge and the Rainbow Bridge of the Hearts, you have other cards that can help access your Crystal Beast engine as well. So I feel like 3 Crystal Bond, as much as you want to see it opening hand, it's just too much to play at 3 if you want to fit other good flex spots. And I still feel like there's a bunch of ways to see this turn 1, so I feel like 2 is perfectly fine. 2 Awakening of the Crystal Ultimates. This one makes more sense at 2 because you need Rainbow Dragon in your hand for this card to be good anyways, so you really want like less of this card because it's not something you exactly want to open, it's rather something you want to be searching. It is an insane card because essentially it just lets Carbuncle summon for free and like special summon all of your Crystal Beasts in the spell or trap card zone. So again, this is something I feel like 2 of is perfectly fine. Arguably, there's maybe potential to cut this down to 1 if you want to play other cards, but I feel like 2 is solid for me. That's it for the crystal spells. On to the crystal traps. We have 2 Crystal Conclave, and Crystal Conclave is something a lot of people I see play at 3. Honestly, I don't think you need to play it at 3, and I'm just also going to put the 2 Crystal Miracle here as well, because I feel like how you ratio these all together matters. Like I see people play like 3 Conclave, 1 Miracle. I've seen 3 Conclave, 2 Miracle. I've even seen 3 Miracle in the deck, which that's a lot. Like these traps are good, but because of like Rainbow Bridge and all the searching you're able to do, you don't really need to play so many. Like playing 4, if you draw 1, it's fine. You start drawing multiples, it gets a little weird, especially because your back row can actually clog itself with the Crystal Beast effect. So I don't know. I feel like 2 and 2 is perfect for me. I don't think Conclave is like the best card in the deck, which I think some Crystal Beast players like tend to think, or maybe that's how the deck's been sort of swaying, but I really don't feel like Conclave is so good you need to play 3 of it. I think 2 and 2 is a fine ratio. Some more cards in the Crystal Beast package. We are playing 2 Foolish Burial Goods, and of course that means we are playing 1 Rainbow Bridge of Salvation. This package is extremely nice because it allows, essentially this is just way better terraforming. You can think of this as like playing 2 terraforming with, you know, the brick for terraforming, which doesn't make any sense because terraforming has no brick. But that's how you can think of it in this situation. Essentially, Foolish Burial Goods dumps Salvation, and then you can banish Salvation to add a Crystal Beast monster and a field spell from your deck to your hand. And essentially what this deck can end up being is field spell control. And this card is so powerful. We don't want to draw it, so we only play 1. Even though we have 2 Foolish Burial Goods, I don't think you want to up the count of this card. So we just have a solid chance to dump Salvation and get huge advantage off of it because it is an insanely powerful card. The field spells we will end up searching is 1 Necro Valley, sort of cause for the format right now with Tearlament and Dark World and Bestials and all these decks that really need their graveyard. This card can shut them down. And Zombie World. And Zombie World's a really nifty card in this deck for a couple of reasons. I'll get to those more when we get to the extra deck. When I mentioned the Spice earlier, it kind of has to do with Zombie World. Because the field spells are a huge part of your deck, so you're going to have one of these out fairly often. Zombie World is solid against Tier, pretty solid against Dragons, but it's amazing versus Fluandereeze, and then Necro Valley I think is your go-to against every matchup that isn't Zombie World. But Zombie World has more applications in this deck because I've sort of made it have more applications in this deck, and that will make more sense as we go along. And from here on, I think when you consider these cards in the deck, the list gets a little more spicy as we go through it. So yeah, if you are enjoying this deck profile, be sure to like and subscribe. Again, it really helps me out. And if you're enjoying the Crystal Beast content, you know that's something you can do as well. So yep, on to the next card. We do play 1 Called by the Grave. This is, you know, one of the best cards in the game. And again, this deck's weak to Droll, so if your opponent is side decking it, you might want this to have against this, but it's just good against tier limits, of course, amongst other things. So yeah, Call by the Grave I think is mandatory. Then we have 3 Pot of Prosperity, which, you know, this card is very good in this deck because you don't have any draw effects, so it's not going to conflict there. And also you want to see like the best cards in your deck. You have a lot of very powerful consistency cards like Foolish Burial Goods to get Rainbow Bridge of Salvation. Obviously you want to see either Bridge of the Heart with a Crystal Beast monster, or like Pegasus or Crystal Bond, Rainbow Bridge. You have so many powerful consistency cards that this is just additional copies to get there. And also your extra deck is pretty free, so there's very little downside to this card, and it's just phenomenal at grabbing the best cards in your deck. And of course, post game 1, this card gets even better at finding side deck cards. 3-Dimensional Fissure. This card is also a fantastic card. You know, this card went to 3 last list, so we're now able to play 3 of this absolutely gross Floodgate. And yeah, I mean, this card doesn't hurt Crystal Beasts at all, because even if Crystal Beast monsters are destroyed on the field, they don't have any wonky rulings. That means they need to get banished and they can't go to the Spell and Trap card zone. Even if Dimensional Fissure's on the field, they still go to the Spell and Trap card zone. At least that was the last ruling I heard way back in the day. I'm talking like 2011, 2012. I hope nothing's changed. If it has, you can leave that down in the comments below. But last I heard, even under Defissure or Macrocosmos or Shifter, Crystal Beast monsters can still go to the Spell and Trap card zone instead of going to the graveyard. So yeah, it shouldn't hurt you at all, and it's amazing, this format, against Dark World, Tearlament, I mean even Sprite to some extent. A lot of decks overall. Of course you would side this out against something like Fluandereeze, but it's still a fantastic main deck choice in my opinion. And then for Go second cards, we have, of course, we all knew this card was in here, or, you know, like, it's pretty obvious once you see it. Again, your deck doesn't get hurt by this, and we're in a pretty strong tier limit format where we need to have cards that let you play. Shifter, one of the best at just floodgating out the opponent and letting you play on your next turn. So I don't think there's much to say about D-Shifter. And then I'm choosing to play 3 Super Poly, and when you look at this card, it's a pretty solid card in the format, right? Like, it's good into quite a few matchups, namely tier if you play the right amount of cards. It's good into a bunch of decks because you have Garura, Mud Dragon, all these great targets. But we're also playing Zombie World, which means there's another target we can play, and I'll leave that for the extra deck. But yeah, Super Poly has more use in this deck than just the regular targets, because we are Floodgate, you know, Field Spell Turbo, and we do get to play Zombie World. And I think that is really nifty, and an additional reason to potentially play Super Poly in this deck as a Go second card. Alright, that is it for the 40 card main deck. On to the extra deck. So we're going to go through the more standard stuff first. Of course, you're going to play some rank 4s. So we have 1 Baguska. I mean, this is one of your first turn plays is like setting up Necro Valley Baguska, so that's pretty good. Dweller, I think that is pretty self-explanatory, this format. Exiton, I mean, if you're stuck in a losing position, Exiton's a nice way to potentially clear the board. You know, you can make rank 4s all day, so I think that's fair. Lightning Chidori is something you can choose to play. You can also opt for other options, like maybe running Borbo and Chakanine to make better Zeus plays. But I'm playing Chidori because it's a nifty card that can like out Floodgates. And of course, even under like TC Boo, Rivalry, or not Rivalry, Goes and Match, you can still like make this card and like out things. So that's pretty nice. And 1 Tornado Dragon. This is just another good way to pop back row. Of course, for all those rank 4s, we are playing the Divine Arsenal AA Zeus. I mean, yeah, if you're running Xyz monsters in your deck, you might as well play this card. It's extremely good. I do play a generic Link 3. It is 1 Unicorn, and this is, you know, there's going to be situations where you need an out to things, or you need to be able to make Unicorn. You could also play Phoenix, which is a lot easier to make and may come up in more situations just because it's so much easier to make in this deck than Unicorn, but Unicorn has more versatility, so I feel like you should play a useful Nightmare in this slot, or even maybe a generic Link, like a Charmer maybe, like a Light Charmer. I think Unicorn's the best for me, but you can like play either Cerberus or Phoenix in this slot. And then we have some very, very nifty cards. So we have 1 Vampire Sucker, which is not something you'd expect to see in Crystal Beast, but all it takes is 2 zombie monsters. And under Zombie World, that is possible, and you can do some cool things with this card. Potentially, there's more you can do post-side decking, but I'm not going to go too in-depth with that because I haven't looked into it much myself, but Vampire Sucker can get you draws under Zombie World, which is nice. 1 Vampire Fascinator, it takes 2 monsters, including a zombie, and what you can do with this card is pretty insane, because on summon, if you have Zombie World on field, you can take one of their monsters in their grave, maybe something big, which is nice, And then you contribute her, because she is a vampire monster, to use her other effect to take a monster your opponent controls and until the end phase, which means you can like clear their board, maybe push for more damage, take really important pieces, link off with their monsters. So there's some really cool things you can do with this card. And then because this Fascinator actually takes 2 monsters from your opponent, you can actually make the zombie vampire with their monsters. At least if I'm not understanding this card wrong, I'm pretty sure if you use your opponent's monsters, you can treat them both as a level 8. If that's not the case, you don't have to play this. You can play something else. If I'm just understanding this like idea wrong, I don't know if it has to be one of your monsters and one of your opponents. It doesn't read that way. I have not used zombie vampire like that in my entire life, so hopefully we're not wrong here. But this seems nifty to me, and it was an idea I had earlier when looking at what to play in the extra deck, because you don't really have too many things you want to play. There's not a lot of things you're actually going to be making, but this little package right here, I was like, I mean, we're playing Zombie World and we're going to have it semi-frequently, so I think this is really interesting. Now, Zombie Vampire you're not going to use against tier limits, but against another deck, maybe you can like mill their cards and see a really large monster and get some value off of it. So at the very least, you can take their monster and use it so that they don't get it back, right? So that was just a potential thought. You don't have to play this package if you don't want to. I just thought it was very cool. For Super Poly targets, we of course have the Mud Dragon, the Garura, and the Starving Venom. I feel like these are the most generic. You're going to go for these most often. You're going to play them in every list with Super Poly. Dragostapelia is more for tier limit because it's just better to make than Starving Venom in a lot of situations, but again, it's just another Super Poly target. And then lastly, we have the, I don't even remember this guy's name, Nether Soul Dragon. And he takes 2 zombie monsters. So if you have Zombie World face up, any monster your opponent controls is free game with Super Poly, which is, you know, it's something pure zombies used to do back in the day, or control zombies. That were on like Zombie World, Super Poly, Rivalry of Warlords. This is a very nice Super Poly target for them, and I thought I'd make use of it. It makes matchups where Super Poly isn't good. Still, like, it not only gives Super Poly a use against matchups where it's not good, it gives Zombie World a use against matchups which is not good, which means when you're main decking these cards, that's a nice bit of extra versatility, and I really enjoy that. So yeah, that is going to do it for this Crystal Beast deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed. Crystal Beast is a deck that I know is extremely, you know, it's a fan favorite, I'll say. People really like to see Crystal Beast decks. People want this deck to do good. And as a catalyst for like Floodgate Turbo, it's actually not a bad deck. And its engine is like small enough, or I guess it's not super small, but it's concise enough that you can like play other things, and this deck's not affected by those floodgates, and you can still do a semblance of what your control strategy is trying to do. So, yep, I hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile. If you did, leave a like and subscribe, and tell me what your favorite Crystal Beast monster is down in the comments below. I'll be sure to read that. You know, Crystal Beast, definitely a fan favorite. You know, we grew up watching this archetype on the, you know, GX anime for many of us. And, you know, it's a very nostalgic archetype. So, yeah, leave your favorite Crystal Beast monster down below. I'll be sure to read it. And with all that being said, this has been Aaron from Top Tier Gaming. Bye, YouTube.